Imagine you're making more money than your parents ever did, more than most people in your city, more than you ever thought you would at this age. And one evening, for no particular reason, you sit down and actually look at it. Not the income. You know that number. You look at everything else. What you own. It's yours. What would still be there if the salary stopped tomorrow? And the number is almost nothing. The apartment isn't yours. Car has 3 years left on the lease. Furniture was bought on a card that still has a balance. The savings account has maybe 2 months of expenses if you're careful. The investments, if there are any, are small. Started late, contributed to. Occasionally, never really a priority because there was always something more immediate to spend on. And you sit there, what most people would consider serious money, you realize you've built almost no actual wealth. That feeling, that quiet, unsettling realization, more common than anyone talks about. The people experiencing it aren't careless. They're not irresponsible. They're often the hardest working people in the room. They just got pulled into a version of financial life that looked like success from every angle, except the one that actually matters. This video is about that gap between income and wealth, between earning well and owning something, and why for a growing number of high earners, that gap is wider than it's ever been. The story we're told about money is pretty simple. Earn more, have more, work hard, get paid well, and financial security follows naturally. It's the implicit promise behind every promotion, every salary negotiation, every career sacrifice. But there's a version of adult financial life that this story completely fails to account for. A version where the income is genuinely high, talking 6 figures, sometimes well into 6 figures, and the wealth is almost non-existent. It has a name in economics, lifestyle inflation. But that name makes it sound like a personal failing, like something that happens to people who lack self-control. And that's not accurate. What's actually happening is far more systemic, far more invisible, and far more deliberate on the part of the industries that profit from it. Here's the thing most people misunderstand about high earners who don't build wealth. They're not blowing money on obviously stupid things. They're not gambling or making wild bets. They're spending money on a lifestyle that looks completely reasonable, given what they earn. And that's exactly the trap. $200,000 a year, a $3,500 apartment doesn't feel extravagant. It's 21% of gross income. Textbook financial advice says, keep housing under 30%, so it clears the rule. A car lease at $700 a month is under 5% of income. Dining out regularly, gym, streaming services, weekend trips, a wardrobe that matches the professional environment. None of these things feel reckless. Individually, they're all defensible. Collectively, they consume almost everything. And the really insidious part is that the lifestyle expands in sync with the income. Every raise gets absorbed almost immediately. Every promotion gets celebrated with something that costs money. The number on the paycheck goes up. The number in the account stays roughly the same. This is not a discipline problem. It's a design problem, and understanding that difference is where everything starts to shift. Let's actually look at what's happening mathematically, because the numbers tell a story that's hard to argue with. At $200,000 a year, after federal and state taxes, depending on where you live, you're taking home somewhere between $120,000 and $140,000. Call it $130,000 to keep it simple. It's roughly $10,800 a month. Now let's build the life that a $200,000 income tends to produce in a major city. Rent or mortgage payment, car, insurance, groceries, dining, travel, clothing, a gym, subscriptions, student loans that haven't been paid off yet, may be helping family members financially, because high earners in certain communities carry that weight quietly. Added up honestly, the monthly spend for a life that looks and feels appropriate for the income is often $8,500 to $10,000, sometimes more. Which means the gap, the money available to build actual wealth, is somewhere between $800 and $2,300 a month. If it's even being saved at all, if it isn't quietly absorbed by irregular expenses, travel plans, or the occasional large purchase that gets justified because I've been working hard. Now compare that to someone earning $80,000 who made very different choices about the lifestyle they built into. Maybe they're living with a roommate, driving an older car they own outright, cooking most of their meals. Their monthly spend might be $4,000. Their savings rate might actually be higher in percentage terms than the person earning 2.5 times as much. This is the paradox that doesn't get talked about enough. Income and wealth are not the same thing, and at high income levels, the pressure to spend proportionally is stronger, not weaker. The social environment changes. The peer group changes. The definition of normal expenses shifts entirely. And humans are profoundly social creatures when it comes to money. We calibrate our spending not against what we can afford in some absolute sense, but against what the people around us are doing. There's a concept in behavioral economics called social proof, and it applies here in a way that's almost uncomfortable to look at directly. When everyone in your professional world takes similar vacations, lives in similar apartments, drives similar cars, eats at similar restaurants, spending isn't a conscious choice anymore. It's just what you do. It's what's normal. And opting out of it feels strange. It can even feel like a statement, like you're announcing something about yourself that you'd rather keep private. Nobody wants to be the person at the work dinner who suggests somewhere cheaper. Nobody wants to explain why they're not coming on the group trip. The social cost of financial independence at high income levels is often a kind of quiet nonconformity, and most people aren't willing to pay that cost because it's immediate and social, while the benefit is distant and abstract. There's also something happening at the identity level that makes this even harder to see clearly. For many high earners, the lifestyle they've built isn't just comfortable, it's evidence that they made it, that the years of education, the stress, the long hours, the sacrifices, produced something real and visible. Scaling back that lifestyle doesn't just feel frugal. It can feel like taking back the evidence, like admitting something that isn't true. And so the income keeps coming in, and the lifestyle consumes it, and the wealth doesn't accumulate. And every year, the gap between what someone earns and what they own grows a little wider, quietly, without anyone really deciding that this is what they want. Here's the question I want you to sit with for a moment. If your income stopped tomorrow, not forever, just for 6 months, what would your financial life actually look like? Not the lifestyle, the underlying structure. What do you own outright? What generates income without you working? What would still be there? For most high earners who haven't been deliberate about wealth building, the honest answer is not much. And that answer reveals something important about the difference between financial comfort and financial security. They feel identical from the inside when the income is flowing. They feel completely different the moment it stops. Financial comfort is income dependent. Feel fine as long as the salary arrives. Financial security is asset dependent. It exists regardless of what happens to your job next month. Shift that changes everything is moving from building a lifestyle to building a position. A position is what you own, what you've accumulated, but doesn't disappear if the job does. The counterintuitive thing about building a position is that it requires spending less than your income allows, consistently, deliberately, and without waiting until you earn even more. Because here's what waiting actually looks like in practice. Every year you delay building real wealth at a high income is not a neutral decision. If $2,000 a month invested over 20 years at a reasonable long-term return grows to somewhere in the region of $1.5 to $1.8 million, then every year you don't invest that $2,000 isn't just a delay, a decision with a price tag. And that price tag doesn't announce itself, just quietly accumulates in the background, in the form of wealth you didn't build but could have. The turning point isn't a dramatic overhaul. It's a quieter, more deliberate question. What would I have to change about my life so that a meaningful percentage of what I earn becomes mine permanently, not just passing through? If you're in this position, earning well but feeling like you don't have much to show for it, the place to start is with honest accounting, not a budget. A budget tells you how to spend. An honest accounting tells you what's actually happening. Go back 3 months. Look at every dollar that left your account. Yet, just see it clearly. People who do this exercise find 2 or 3 categories of spending that are significantly higher than they consciously realized. Not because they're being irresponsible, but because automatic ambient spending is designed to be invisible. Once you can see where the money is going, the next question isn't, what should I cut? It's, what matters enough to keep? Those are very different questions, and the second one produces much better decisions because it starts from your actual values rather than from a guilt-driven reaction. There, the principle that makes the most difference is simple but surprisingly difficult to execute at high income levels. Well, first, at a level that actually moves the needle. Not 5%. At a $200,000 income, 5% is $10,000 a year. It's not nothing, but it's also not wealth building at any meaningful pace. The uncomfortable target for someone in this income bracket who wants to build real wealth over a decade is somewhere between 20% and 30% of take-home income going to assets. Not spending. Assets. Things that accumulate value or generate returns. That might mean maxing out tax-advantaged accounts first, then investing the remainder in a simple, low-cost index fund portfolio. It might mean saving aggressively toward a property down payment if ownership is the goal. The specific vehicle matters less than the consistency and the percentage. Last thing, and this one is about the social dimension that makes high-income wealth building so psychologically difficult, is finding at least 1 or 2 people in your life who are deliberately building wealth rather than just spending it. Not to talk about money constantly, but because the social environment shapes behavior more than almost anything else. If everyone around you treats spending as the natural output of earning, that becomes your default. If even one person in your close circle is quietly building something and not making a performance of it, it normalizes a different path. There's nothing wrong with earning well and enjoying your life. That's not the argument here. The argument is simply that a salary, no matter how large, is not the same as security. And the gap between the two doesn't close on its own. The most important financial shift a high earner can make isn't a strategy. It's a realization that the goal was never the income. The income was always supposed to be the means to something else, something owned, something lasting, something that doesn't require you to keep working at full speed, indefinitely, just to maintain what you have. You've already done the hard part. Getting to an income that makes wealth building genuinely possible takes years of work, education, and sacrifice for most people. The frustrating truth is that getting there doesn't automatically produce wealth. You still have to choose it, deliberately, against a current that's constantly pushing in the other direction. But the fact that you're sitting with this question, why don't I own more? What am I actually building? That question is the beginning of something different. It doesn't require a dramatic life overhaul. It doesn't require giving up the things that matter to you. It just requires making the gap between what you earn and what you keep wide enough and consistent enough that 10 years from now, the answer to, what do I own, is something you're proud of. You have the income. That's not a small thing. The question now is just what you do with it. And that answer is still yours to write.